This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got with the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Oh. Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
It's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
40 of the best sim racers, $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Super Cup.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Here on the iRacing Esports Network this week, we return to Australian GT racing, the Epiroc Sprint Series Australia, of course presented by ourselves at SimSpeed Television Round 5 at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. We've got a 45-minute sprint race coming up for you in the GTE machinery. My name is Reese Gardner. Joining me in the commentary box, David Haynes once again. David, round 5 of the championship at Montreal. It's looking pretty cloudy out there, cool track temperatures, which means that there'll be some knife edge grip out there at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Yep, exactly. Really fun track in all manner of cars, and that slipstream, that toe down the back straight towards the final chicane will produce some good racing. And that final chicane, of course, is very, very difficult, and that's why the exit is known as the Wall of Champions, because it doesn't matter how good you are, what kind of pedigree you're racing at, everyone who's anyone has messed up that corner before, and sometimes with race-ending consequences. We saw a safety car last round out at Kota. I'd have to suggest that the likelihood we'd see one in this 45-minute race here on a street circuit even more likely, and the strategy games that produced really shuffled up the order and gave us plenty to talk about last week. So if today is half as exciting as 2 weeks ago, then we're in for a great race.
We certainly are. Montreal, of course, a place where walls are close at all times, but it's got a very fast and flowing layout. It's not too dissimilar on paper to Albert Park in Melbourne, if we want to bring it a bit closer to home for us Australians. But we've got a full field of cars out there ready to go, and I tell you what, those qualifying times are certainly ones to behold, and we'll be able to check out how the grid stacks up in a second. But first, we should go to the championship standings, because there's been a little bit of a shake-up. The point system has been adjusted slightly, and there's been a few changes with regards to penalty points. So it means that things have actually been very close up the front between Alexander Bird and Zachary Hanlon. Only 58 points between those guys. They got a little bit of a gap there to Rizzo, Briggs, Jarek, and Worley behind, but the gaps are quite close.
Yeah, exactly. And off his win last time out, Ross Rizzo's jumped up to third in the standings there, and it puts 2 trick cars in the top 3 and gives them 3 in the top 8 as well. So they're coming into form late in the season as well.
They definitely are. Trick Sim Sports really has turned it on this season. And what we'll see in 7th, John Peasnick on screen, that unfortunately is not going to be the case for much longer for him, because he is elected to change cars. He is now driving the Ferrari, so he has forfeited all of his championship points he's accrued up until now. Peasnick's going to have some work to do towards the end of the season.
Yeah, indeed, but certainly going to hope for some good results and probably looking for some podiums and some wins regardless of the overall championship standings. That's the only reason you'd forfeit all of your points and switch manufacturer mid-round. And certainly the Ferraris look pretty in the JPR Racing livery. They've got, as you say, a uphill battle for themselves though in the championship standings.
They certainly have, and another battle that we'll see in the last couple parts of the season is that of Bo Albert. He's currently switched to the Porsche, so another driver who's forfeited all the points he's gained up until this point. He is running some good times in the practice session though, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Meanwhile, we take a look at the drivers making their final preparations. The number 96 Trick Sim Sports machine. Tell you what, an excellent showing that Trick has had in those BMWs, and there's a good view of the Wall of Champions out of the last chicane. You do have to be careful about how you take those curbs.
Yep, certainly. We're going to have a big grid once again, more than 40 cars, more than 40 drivers for a 45-minute race. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I definitely think there's going to be some amount of carnage on the first couple of laps. It's just a matter of who might get tangled up in it, where will it happen, and will it be enough to trigger a safety car? We just saw someone trying with the limits in the final chicane there. Definitely a place where you can make some passes, but also end your race very quickly. That wall is right there.
It certainly is. A message from our sponsor now, right before we go into the start-finish grid.
Epiroc is like a large extended family and everyone looks after each other. This is what inspires me.
Epiroc Australia is looking for passionate people to be part of our global team and to make a real difference for our customers. If you're ready to start a new journey, visit us at epiroc.com.au. The starting grid then for round 5 of Epiroc Sprint Series Australia. John Peasnick on pole from Alexander Bird by a few thousandths of a second. Anthony Winkleman lines up third. Darren Lobb and Ryan Jarek completing the top 5. A very good showing from them. Trent Thomas and Dominic Ferraris next up. And Michael Healy rounds out the top 8 for Trick.
9th place is Zach Hanlon, second in the standings, looking to move up from there. He's going to be alongside Justin Wallace from Race on Oz. The next row is going to be Reese Keane and Scott Solosky. And then some more Trick cars with Martin Silvassi in 13th, Bradley Ratu in 14th, 15th goes to Joel A. Smith, and 16th place is going to be Philip Worley.
Adam Briggs for DPR Racing lines up 17th. Daryl Carter for Fusion Sim Racing in 18th spot. Ross Rizzo third in the standings. He starts down in 19th. Got some work to do there. Brett Cananzi in 20th, rounding out the top 20. Well, the rest of the field is going to cycle through. We've got a pumped lineup of machines for round 5 here at Montreal of the Epiroc Sprint Series Australia, and John Peasnick already away. He's got a good gap there as the green flag flies. Alexander Bird currently under some pressure from Anthony Winkleman, and trying to go for a move there is Darren Lobb in the Ferrari, but he has to hold back. Oh, drivers running wide in the background. Michael Healy, one of them stuck on the outside, but he manages to get the traction in. This is the part of the circuit where things really start to tighten up. You don't want to be running side by side through these chicanes. But Peasnick has got a nice clear track in front of him. He's getting down some very good racing lines at the moment. Winkleman all over the curbs as problems for Danny Davison.
Yep, indeed, that BMW missing a lot of the front, and he's unfortunately either looking like a retirement or going to need to get a lot of repairs done to that. Riding on board with the 5th place, Darren Lobb, as he's trying to hunt down, and the Ferrari's definitely looking quick in the first part of the race here. So John Peasnick has built out a little bit of a gap, and now Darren Lobb is looking at the back of some BMWs.
Yes, quite a few BMWs actually, but John Peasnick evidently believing the Ferrari to be the best choice for the second half of this season. He's got a fantastic gap, and oh my goodness, there's some big trouble down there at the hairpin. A couple of drivers tripping over each other, and obviously some damage resulting as well. Chris Allen With very big problems. Not much room down there, David.
Yeah, exactly. Nose into the wall. Same for Darren Huxham. I think it's definitely one of the bigger braking zones on the circuit. Can be tempting to try a move that might not stick. So we're going to see the modem simulation replay. What's gone on? Darren Huxham got a little bit of a help. I think Chris Owen sticks his nose to the inside a little bit late, and then it ends up with both of them stuck together, going nose first into the barrier on the outside there, and blocking up quite a bit of the exit of what's a narrow section of the circuit. Luis Polo Gallon, how has that happened for him?
Yeah, well, that's just losing it under brakes into the hairpin. Gallon, of course, setting the second fastest time in qualifying, but unfortunately put to the back of the grid for escaping during qualifying. He actually got some help there from, I believe that was Thomas Hens. Or, my apologies, Joel Smith. Sorry about that, Hinsey. Still a little bit rusty as to car colours in this series, David, so occasionally there's a bit of a slip-up.
Yeah, so a couple of incidents on the first lap, but none of them disabling or completely blocking cars, so we stay green flag racing. Looking up here, Ferraris looking at the inside of Jarek, I think it was, and a little bit of contact, but it goes a lot smoother than it did a lap ago for some of those other competitors we just saw in the replay. Side-by-side drag race down the long back stretch, and there's some drivers behind lining up to have a look as well.
Yeah, Hanlon, he's got nowhere to go here. He's got the slipstream, but obviously boxed into that tighter line thanks to Jarek being there. But Jarek, a little bit of oversteer there on the exit of the final chicane. That's actually balked Hanlon too, allowed Michael Healy a bit of a leg up here. So the Altus Esports guy, second in the championship, and a little bit of trouble here. Almost a bit of contact there between Jarek and Healy. Healy running wide again on lap 3 of this race.
Yeah, wow, so a little bit of damage to the nose of the Altus car for Zach Hanlon, but he carries on, and it just shows that little mistakes when the pack is this tight can really check up the competitors behind, and there's a flash of the headlights from the trick car. Not happy with how Hanlon treated him.
Certainly not, but it's tight quarters around here in Montreal. You have to be prepared for stuff like that. That's a good exit there from Healy onto the back section. And this is going to be a potential move here. This is one of the few braking zones up this end of the circuit where you can make a move, but Healy going off the track in the process. He's got to slow down, so he's going to end up losing a lot more positions than he would have gained out of that one. And Kozlowski really on the back of Hanlon now, touching almost in the braking zone for the hairpin. Packed together like sardines, Justin Wallace just trying to find his way through the carnage at the moment as Reese Keane now pressuring Healy. Long line of cars down the back straight.
Yeah, exactly. For such a tight street circuit, this long back straight is really keeping them all together, giving some opportunities to overtake here. It's not going to be this time for Reese Keane. We just did have a look to the inside, maybe to defend from the car behind as well. And look at this angle. A lot of the cars jumping over the curbs, getting a little bit out of shape. You've got to cut that to try and shave off the angle of the corner. But if you get the throttle open too early, bouncing over the curbs, it will send you around.
Yeah, some harsh curbing here on this circuit. It is a Formula 1 track. Oh, yeah, back in the background, Martin Silvassi for Trick Sim Sports. Turned around there at, I believe that's turn 2. That's rather unfortunate for Silvassi. He was running quite well in the upper reaches of the midfield. Modem simulation replay then, David. Let's see what happened.
Exactly, so they all check up pretty hard into that hairpin and just gets a tap from behind from Philip Worley in the DPR racing car. No real malice there, but you see that there's all the cars checking each other up on the apex of the corner. Worley gets in a little bit hot and just tiny tap is enough to send Silvassi around. Won't be too much damage, but it cost him quite a bit of time and critically cost him maybe at least 10 positions. And I think track position is a lot more critical here than it was at Kota or some of the other circuits we go to. It's not looking easy to make up too many spots in a hurry.
No, certainly not. There's obviously some very tempting braking zones around here, but actually throwing one up the inside and committing to it, making it stick, is incredibly difficult. There's the view from the back of Ryan Jarek as Hanlon tries his best to get himself back into the top 6. Scott Kozlowski also, oh goodness me, that's bad for Ryan Jarek. Little appointment with the Wall of Champions. Doesn't seem to be that much in the way of cosmetic damage on his car, but one position lost.
Yeah, shallow little angle of contact, but slid along the wall, and that really hurt the run out of the corner. Does give another position to Zach Hanlon. Up the front, though, John Peasnick built out more than 3 seconds, and Bird going very slowly because he's battling hard here with Winkleman, Lobb, and those others. So this is really all helping John Peasnick get away. Side-by-side contact, and the Ferrari cannot get past Alexander Bird. Started second, now running fourth. He's lost 2 spots off the start. He's trying to get some of them back, trying to defend from Dominic Ferraris at the same time.
Yeah, that's a big problem there for Alexander Bird. Might actually have been a slowdown. We'll take a look at a modem simulation replay then to see what the case was. So
I saw Peasnick's lead go from 2 seconds to 4 seconds on my timing screen, and this is how it happened. Bird just too hot, taking the Sebastian Vettel line through that chicane, and this time he lets the 2 competitors, Lobb and Winkleman, through, and then has to fight for his life to defend against Ferraris. We see this battle between Lobb and Winkleman. Lobb taking great opportunity to grab that position away from Winkleman, who'd been slowed up by his own teammate, rejoining the track slowly.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things that you get at this circuit in these kinds of cars. It's usually a single-seater circuit as Montreal, but when you put these closed-wheel machines on it, you end up seeing a whole different racing dynamic. This is the view then from Joshua Burden for Fusion Sim Racing, just rounding out the top 20, chasing down Benjamin Johnson then for position 19, and Burden has had a couple of small dings to his BMW. Getting another replay. Must have been something else happening on the track. Darren Huxham, he had some issues on, I believe, lap 2, and that's another appointment with the wall that he's unfortunately had to mark in his schedule. It gets worse, we're hearing from our director. Let's see what happened to Darren down here. Oh, might be a hardware failure.
Either that, or he's realised he was quite far down the order, picked up a little bit more damage, and has just decided to park it. Now, I got to correct myself earlier. I said it was kind of difficult to pass around here. There's a couple people proving me wrong. Our biggest mover in the field, Bo Albert, was up 17. He's just gone up 18 spots from where he started, going ahead of Warren Pickering. So there's a few drivers out there making some big moves.
Yes, indeed. And Albert pushing incredibly hard, almost getting into the wall himself. A bit of news from the administrators as we take a look at the Jarek Sislovsky battle. Chris Owen has been black flagged for causing a collision. That was the incident down at the hairpin earlier with, I believe, Huxham.
Yeah, indeed, so Stewart's taking action on that one 10 minutes into this race, and of course remembering that we've been green all this time so far. A pit stop will be required for a little bit of fuel for our competitors, and I would suggest that if anyone wants to jump in very early, in about 5 minutes time, that pit window might open to be able to pit and get to the end. Most of our competitors will try and take the fuel as long as they can, especially those high up the field, but some drivers in the middle of the pack might take a gamble.
Yeah, one of the drivers that we might expect to take a gamble is Josh Burden on screen at the moment, because he's very close to Johnson, but doesn't seem to be able to be making any headway and getting past him. So perhaps a stop earlier on for Josh would be beneficial, especially considering right behind them they've got Thomas Hinz bearing down on them in that Ford. Meanwhile, Alexander Bird and Dominic Ferraris fighting for 4th and 5th. And Bird has actually been able to get himself into a bit of a rhythm here. Starting to shake off the pressure of Ferraris, but he's not able to make any advancement on Winkleman and Lobb in front of him.
Exactly, we know Bird was running in second earlier, qualified very well. There's something about the pressure of the cars behind unsettled him earlier, and he went in too hot into that chicane like we saw, picked up a slowdown, lost some spots. Now he might have changed the tune. He's behind his teammate. He's no longer the leading trick car. He might be the one to try and save some fuel, go a bit longer, make Winkleman push through the air. Ryan Jarek, Philip Worley onto the pit lane, and this is serving some penalties, I would assume. Yes. Particularly Philip Worley. We saw he was the one gave, I think, Silvassi or Winkleman a little bit of a tap early in the lap. Here comes a replay because Cameron Dance has had an issue and gone around.
Yeah, Cameron Dance in the Slick Sim Sports Porsche using that beautiful art car paint job. This looks like a potential move for what would have been 18th position. He manages to get the move done cleanly, but he just pushes too hard in the second part of the chicane, and round he goes. Very unfortunate, but
Yeah, greedy on the
Porsche,
bumps, it looked like.
yeah, that Porsche, its engine is a bit more forward than it used to be, but it still tends to get a bit wayward if you drive these curbs the wrong way. Thomas Hinz then, it looks like Burden has managed to get past Johnson, and now Hinz is trying to take advantage.
So riding on board with that Ford, looking forward at the Ferrari, and again, quite a few curbs around here that are quite tall, and the GT cars do a little bit better than the open wheelers in jumping across them.
Yeah, they certainly do. These those anti-cut curbing systems that you see around the circuit, they don't mean much to these GTE cars. It's fantastic to see how much the drivers push over these curbs. Hinz, it seems, has not been able to do much with regards to... Oh, I just saw a bit of contact with the wall. Meanwhile, a bit of three wide running potentially. Trent Thomas having some adventures on the outside of the hairpin. And Bradley Ratu able to keep that position out of the hairpin. Some fantastic racing going on down that second half of the circuit. And Adam Briggs then coming in to serve a penalty. Trent Thomas is coming in, I presume, for some regular service.
We'll certainly know very shortly, but we should be just within that window of drivers being able to fuel to get from the end here or in a couple laps time, I would think. Bumper grid that we've got, more than 40 cars, means there is action up and down all the way, and we're looking here, another one of those trick cars. Michael Healy having a look at Justin Wallace, and a few drivers have elected to switch to the Ferrari, and the Ferrari definitely seems like it's got a little bit of pace in it now, compared to maybe 2 weeks ago it was all a BMW fest.
Yeah, certainly was. The BMW was the car of choice for many of the front runners at the starting point of this season, but the Ferrari with its mid-engine layout, good amount of torque from its twin-turbo V8, certainly up a few drivers' alleys, and you can see the punch that Wallace gets off the hairpin there. Not much that Healy can do in response to that at the moment. Meanwhile, on the opposite end of the scale, Anthony Winkleman in the slipstream of Darren Lobb, he's actually managing to make his BMW very slick in a straight line. Potential move for second place, potentially coming up. Oh no, unfortunately, that's a car stopped at the hairpin. Philip Worley in a bit of an awkward spot. We might see a safety car out of this, David.
The race goes from bad to worse for him because he'd already served that penalty, which had put him down here in, the low 30th kind of positions. See the replay here. He's probably trying to make up some positions as he's just gone in too hot on the brakes into the hairpin. Oh, he gets on the grass.
Goodness me. We're staying with this replay because something happened in the realm of Warren Pickering too. Coming through this kink, Pickering going to make the move on a very damaged Ferrari alongside him. Looks like the other car is Brad Newman. Oh my goodness. I think Pickering was caught out a bit there. Newman obviously going for the pits, and Pickering, oh my goodness. That was almost a very bad incident there, but good avoidance by all the drivers there. My goodness.
Yeah, it could have been worse. He was in a very awkward spot there. I mean, really, he was like on the racing line. He was trying to get away from the racing line, and Rob Harris, good job. Good job heads up avoiding that, because that could have been a nasty T-bone accident there. A lot of damage for both of those cars, but they did, in the end, avoid it. Now, Lob, his lap times have not been bad in the last couple of laps. He's not letting John Piesnik get too far away. Winkleman, I think, has the pace at this point in the race, but he's just caught up behind Lob a little bit. If he could get through, he might be able to close in on John Piesnik. As it is right now, this lap time's pretty equal between Piesnik and Darren Lobb.
Yeah, certainly looks that way. Piesnik with 31.082, 31.107 for Darren Lobb, 31.29 for Winkleman. That's your top three. So Lobb seems to be holding his own very nicely, but Winkleman, I think, is just biding his time. He's not usually the kind of guy that goes full aggression early on in the race. He might be looking after his tires, looking after his fuel numbers, and seeing if he can make some gains when the pit stop comes around.
Yeah, because certainly the gap that Piesnik's got is 3.5 seconds, but it's not 5 seconds or 10 seconds Winkleman will have plenty of time to try and close that down, and really the way the draft plays on the back straight here, if he can get within 1 second, then he can close the rest of that gap pretty easily.
He certainly can, and with this slipstream, it's certainly helping his fuel numbers. The braking zone down at the end of this lap, prime opportunity to save a bit of fuel, shorten your pit stop time. It looks like Peacenik is far enough ahead that these guys basically don't have a chance unless something drastic happens. So all they can do is fight amongst themselves, as they are doing now. Can Winkleman make it work around the outside? No, not quite. Very well defended there from Darren Lobb. Nature of the track coming into play there. What will happen down at the Hamilton-Vettel chicane that became so infamous earlier this year? Nice smooth lines there from Winkleman, but Lobb is just soaking up this pressure at the moment.
Yeah, that was a very interesting move by Winkleman to try and go around the outside of that corner, but it just didn't quite work out. He couldn't carry the speed out there. Lobb gave him plenty of room though, and then got far enough ahead to be able to close the door. Winkleman looking towards the inside here. Lobb half-heartedly defends it. Winkleman backs out of it, but now they're starting to cost each other time. Now Peacenik is getting away, and also Alexander Bird in the background closing in a little more as well. So it's reached the point where Lobb and Winkleman are costing each other time.
Yeah, it looks like the best of Darren Lobb's tyres has already passed. Meanwhile, Zach Hanlon and Dominic Ferraris in 5th and 6th, both looking quite battered. Hanlon has managed to get through on Ferraris finally. He now occupies a position in the top 5. So one more position in his fight against Alexander Bird in the standings. Meanwhile, Winkleman continuing to have to back off in the braking zones here, but Darren Lobb, it seems, is looking a bit more ragged corner by corner.
Kind of looks like what we're seeing is the Ferraris have come really quick out of the gate, and now maybe they're wearing out their tyres a little bit more, something like that. The pace looks to be swinging back towards some of the BMWs when you look at this battle between Lobb and Winkleman and that battle between Hanlon and Ferraris where Hanlon has gotten through. The Ferraris may be starting to fade a little bit as they get deeper into a run.
Yes, indeed. We just saw Michael Healy there jumping into the pits, getting his stop out of the way as we are... Wow, there's 26 minutes to go in this race. Already it's been about 20 minutes of racing. Absolutely flowing by. Just goes to show, once again, this series has non-stop action, and we end up losing track of just how much time is passing. This 3 BMW battle is for the final position in the top 10. Brett Cananzi, Reese Keane, and Bradley Ratu all fighting hard for this last position here.
Yep, indeed, an all BMW battle coming through one of those chicanes on the way down towards the hairpin, and I think Keane has a pretty good run, not close enough to dive down on the brakes into the hairpin, but he needs to set up a good exit from here towards the chicane, and look how much they all close up once they concertina on the brakes. There's a couple car lengths, compresses down to almost nothing, and Keane got another good run off the final corner, off the hairpin. You can see he's closing in, but will he get close enough before the braking zone?
Good run.
Definitely have a look. It is a good run. They're going to be side by side on the brakes.
Whoa, Jesus, and Bradley Ratu goes straight for the pits there, and may or may not have caught out Reese Keane, but Ratu taking that opportunity there to take his stop. Now, we talk a lot about the undercut and the overcut, as that's an interesting onboard view there. Once again, into the first couple of turns. Undercut versus overcut. What is the best strategy here, do you think, considering the weather?
Well, we don't expect to see anyone taking tyres at their stops, just fuel. So really, it's all about how much struggle you're having getting through the traffic. I mean, an overcut is probably what most people are going for. An undercut is possible. You'd be carrying more weight of fuel. It's only really going to work if you're really balled up in some traffic. It's much slower than you. This battle between Hamlin and Ferraris is back on. Hamlin was properly out of shape. Ferraris is now going to have his nose to the inside on the brakes into the hairpin. I know what's going on, but Ferraris has managed to get that spot back for the moment. And look, here's a trick car, Scott Solosky, who's going to try and take advantage of this battle.
Yeah, Hanlon was some extra front-end damage after that. It just It looks to me like Hanlon messed up his exit out of the chicane before the hairpin. That's the reason for it. This is Thomas Hins, meanwhile, in the Ford. That is not what you would want to see happening. Oh, and there's been a problem for Zach Hanlon coming into the pits, as well as Ferraris. Hanlon has spun on the entry into pit lane, so it looks like it may have actually been a late decision for Hanlon to pit. Here is the modem simulation replay. They come down the back straight. Hanlon obviously flashing the lights. All three of them going for the pits at the same time, and Hanlon just loses it under brakes.
Well, he probably knew where the pit lane speed limit starts, but maybe the driver in front of Keane braked just a little bit earlier than he expected. Whatever it was, that all three of them coming into the pits has caught out Hanlon and cost him a lot of time. I think he kept it off the wall, but that looks like 5 or 10 seconds lost. He could be out of the top 10 by the time all the pit stops are done. That really will help Keane and the other trick car that was in there.
Yeah, Dominic Ferraris too. He doesn't have any pressure from behind. He's come out just behind Cameron Stubber in the number 30. Meanwhile, Darren Lobb still occupying second place. These guys up the front are going long, as actually coming up on some traffic in the form of Chris Owen right up ahead. Brett Hender too. Both of those guys making their way through as they complete their 14th lap. So Darren Lobb starting to face a few issues here. Could potentially get drawn back into the... Wow, Bo Albert making a move there up into the top 10. Fantastic run so far from that guy in the Porsche. Plus 37 positions for Bobo.
Yeah, he started dead last in the field, 47th place, and he's been helped by maybe about 15 or so cars in front of him having taken their pit stop, but he has also made a lot of those moves on track, and there was another one of them. He's one of those other drivers who've made a car switch mid-season, and he's gone into the Porsche, and it looks like it's working for him. There's not that many other Porsches out there, but certainly his pace is not lacking, and the ability to overtake it also looks like it's there when it comes to the braking and the top end speed of the Porsche.
Yeah, well, it looks like Bo's come home in a way, as Hanlon almost jumping into the wall of champions once again. But Albert has some good experience in the Porsche and Neo Endurance. Altus Esports have put good use of that car, so it's probably a good old return to form there for Bo Albert as they get a little crossed up here at the hairpin. Of course, Chris Owen and Daryl Carter having to let those guys go, and got a little bit awkward for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, we're past the halfway point in this race now, so the traffic is starting to play an effect on our leading cars, and Lobb stays out, Winkleman stays out, Bird stays out, and so did John Peasnick. So there's now quite a gap backwards from 4th place Alexander Bird to 5th place Brett Cananzi, because we've seen some of the cars from that part of the pack pit already, like Dominic Ferraris, for example.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what will happen to Ferraris in the later stages here. Hanlon continuing to try and make his way back up. He's got a fresh car there, so he won't have any straight line speed disadvantage. He just needs to keep it out of those walls. He's just had luck not fall his way in this race so far. Not good for his championship charge. Meanwhile, back in the field, have a look at this.
Yep, another battle representing a couple of different manufacturers, because we've got the Ford here between the BMW and the Ferrari, and there's Dominic Ferraris, who's already pitted. He now finds himself, he's slotted back into a little bit of traffic. The cars in front, Misdale and Stubber, haven't pitted yet. Now Ferraris is losing a little bit of time because he can't get through them yet. This is definitely favoring some of those drivers he was battling who've stayed out, because you see, once again, he's being defended very hard by Cameron Stubber when they're not on the same strategy here. Stubber's not letting Ferraris through.
Yeah, I think Ferraris will be a bit miffed at that, but of course, Stubber running his own race, so might not be aware of what Ferraris has done in the past few laps. You can see he's managing to get the power down nicely, but having to defend in the braking zones as 3rd and 4th then in the pits for Trick. Oh, here we go, defensive again from Stubber. Ferraris is going to try it round the outside, not able to maintain that momentum. Straight lining the exit may help more towards the end of the straight. We'll see if the Ferrari can get into the draft of the Ford, potentially make a move, or will Stubber decide to go straight on into the pits this time by?
We've seen Bird and Winkleman in the pits. Ross Rizzo came into the pits a lap before. I think all of the trick guys have pitted now. Oh, Stubber misses the final chicane. That's going to let Ferraris through. It might let Scott Solosky through as well, but all of the trick guys coming into the lane a little bit earlier, they think there's something to be gained from that.
Oh my goodness.
And Cananzi that have stayed out as they battle continually side by side. And again, Healy trying to get past the car that hasn't pitted yet. No, my apologies, Jarek has pitted. Jarek is just having quite a good race here. So Jarek and Healy battling. Stubber in front hasn't pitted yet, and it's all going on. So maybe pitting a bit earlier has just put some of these guys into a bit too much traffic.
Yeah, they may have had to have waited just so that they didn't have the gaps in front of them when they came out, or a larger gap, I should probably say. Struggling to find the words here, but Ryan Jarek straight on the headlight flash button because he knows that Stubber is not pitted yet and would probably be better best to let them go. More drivers in the pits now. The leaders, Darren Lobb and John Piesnik, now in the Ferraris. So Anthony Winkleman and Alexander Bird now, they'll have to make this a fantastic final half of a lap. I tell you what, side-by-side running for Jarek and Healy out of the hairpin. They are not able to leave each other alone. I bet they both wish that Stubber wasn't there in front of them.
Yeah, Jarek, another driver trying to go around the outside of the hairpin on Cameron Stubber, and it just not working. He will just manage to fend off the Healy behind, but then he misses the final chicane. So we saw Stubber come into the pit lane. That might have distracted Jarek. He might have been using the car in front for his braking point and then overshot it. So Healy gets two positions there as one car pits from in front of him. The other one makes a mistake and massively overshoots the chicane and will pick up a slow down penalty. Look now, Cam Dance yet to pit. He's got Winkleman behind him.
Yes, indeed. Lobb has actually dropped to fourth. So it looks like the earlier pitting has worked out well for Anthony Winkleman here, because a 2-second longer stop there for Darren Lobb. Must have been some kind of mistake made in the pits for him, because Piesnik now is enjoying a wonderful lead.
Or maybe he just overfueled it, or was just a little bit thirstier because he had Winkleman being towed behind him. Winkleman now going to try to make the move on Dance. This time Winkleman gets to the inside of the hairpin. Dance runs quite deep indeed, so that's great for Winkleman. What about Bird and Lobb behind? Bird, now the next driver, is going to have to try and make a move on that Porsche of Cam Dance.
Yeah, well, looks like there is not a representative lap time after the pit stop. Almost going 3 wide here. Yes, 3 wide. That's a little bit dangerous. Cameron Dance has pitted just up ahead. Brett Cananzi in a little bit of a stressful spot there with Zachary Hanlon.
Yeah, indeed, the two of them were battling as they came up on a lapped car, so they ended up going 3 wide there. And Hanlon is the winner, but Cananzi, look how quick that car is in a straight line. We know there's a little bit of, or at least was a little bit of aero damage to the front of the Altus BMW. It might have been fixed in the pit stop, but definitely the slipstream was more powerful than I would have otherwise expected. That's going to make it difficult for Hanlon to defend.
Yeah, he'll have to concentrate quite a bit on his exits, get a little bit of extra momentum. It's difficult to do around a track like this where mid-corner speed and the way you approach the flow of the circuit is so important. But Cananzi versus Hanlon, certainly not over by any stretch. Meanwhile, it looks like Darren Lobb is now on his own there in fourth, because Dominic Ferraris has dropped back quite a bit from him.
Yeah, so the battle's not quite as close up the front of the pack as they were before the pit stops. Piesnik's still leading at just 4 seconds over Winkleman and Bird, so the trick cars have come back into second and third. Then got to look down the field to 12th and 13th here with Hanlon and Cananzi for the next best battle. And how close did Hanlon get to that wall on the exit? You might put a little bit of a scuff on the mirror, but other than that, it looks okay. He's doing everything he can to try and break away from Cananzi. Can't afford any mistakes right now. And then it's a little bit deeper in the field before we get to some of the other battles, but there's still plenty up and down the field. 14 minutes, about 10 laps to go in this round of Sprint Series Australia.
Yep, there was a problem for Dominic Ferraris. He actually has lost a position to Michael Healy. Had a bit of over-rotation in the hairpin early on the last lap, so he's got a bit of extra work to do if he wants to maintain that top 6. So Ryan Jarrett, Dominic Ferraris and Michael Healy, potential 3-car battle forming. And Sislovsky ran a lap last lap 2/10 slower than Healy did, so it could potentially be a fight for the top 5 if the likes of Healy and Ferraris can keep up their pace.
Yeah, inside our top 10, Scott Solowski is the driver with the most positions gained with 7, so he's done quite well for himself. Some of the trick guys have played that strategy card well, and we look down in the field and a 4-car battle over 30th place here, 28th, 29th, 30th and 31st. Pickering leads Worley, leads Newman, leads Harrison. You know, Worley should be pretty quick, but he got a drive-through penalty earlier in the race. It's put him quite down the order. So he's had 2 pit stops, effectively 2 times through the lane compared to the cars around him that he's racing.
Meanwhile, a change for second. Anthony Winkleman is down into third. Alexander Bird occupies second place now. We'll get a modem simulation replay of the moment that happened, and it was down the back straight into the chicane. Winkleman letting Bird go. Team orders there at Trick.
We know Bird's leading the point standings in the championship, and he might have said, look, I think I can get after John Peasnick, or at the very least, if we want to win this championship, I need to take home maximum points. That was as much of a wave buy, much of a point buy as you'll ever see. Bird will not make an easier position any other time. So Bird goes ahead of Winkleman, and then for the Trick guys, the battles continue. Those Ferraris is trying to get back past Healy. Maybe Ferraris has learnt about the tyres, about where the grip is and isn't for him. He's now got an opportunity to come back through if he can just keep it clean and keep it tidy and not over-rotate as you described it earlier.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, that battle for 28th has just had another chapter written. Philip Worley getting by Warren Pickering. Those guys were running very closely through the hairpin and down the straight. So Worley making up 1 more position, but it's still a good run there for Warren Pickering. Remember, he started in 38th position, so he's done well to make his way up the field. Oh no!
Brad Newman and Rob Harris, and Harris goes around to get a tag on the rear, and that's not the first time we've seen that happen in this corner. The way the cars slow up and check up through that corner, it can happen. Here's the replay from on board with Brad Newman. And we'll see, you know, maybe how malicious it was. Oh, he got close once, put the nose to the inside, and then tapped again.
Harris ran a little wide. The gap was there, and I think Newman thought he could take it, but Harris, of course, trying to follow his line and straighten up the exit. So they both came together. I do think that was a bit naughty from Newman, but Harris was pushing quite hard into the corner.
Yeah, indeed, Harris definitely did breeze up a bit wide of the apex. Zach Hamlin has had a slowdown, and he's a race that started very well is suddenly not going quite so good. He's lost that spot to Brett Cananzi, and of course here it's just that's into the wall. Actually, that's actually a pretty hard hit into those tires. It's surprising you don't see more damage on that car. We'll see how much that affects his lap times, but big incident there for Hamlin. We're right on board with the modem simulation replay, and oh boy, just
going way too hard into the final chicane. What is happening to Zachary Hanlon? It's quite bizarre seeing the amount of mistakes he's making. Just a very unfortunate day out for him. Cameron Dance with some big issues as well. Dance, of course, a competitor in this championship of many seasons, and he's had a lot of amazing displays in racing situations. So not sure what's going on for him here. Looks like he has just gone straight into the wall there on the exit. Again, oh my goodness.
Looked no good, and then he's gone nose first into the wall again.
Proper damage.
Yeah, the front right must have been pointing in exactly the wrong direction there. We'll see what the wheel looks like on board, but he tries to get on with it and gather it up, but you can see that car is a handful, crabbing hard, not stable at speed. And that puts him into the wall again, which I'm sure did not make it any better. And that's why we see him driving so slowly, a lot of damage, car crabbing bad. That wheel 30, 40 degrees off center.
Yeah, a lot of drivers with some rotten luck here today. Cameron Dance, yet another one of them. Meanwhile, battle for 6 between Healy and Ferraris. These guys have continued fighting just as hard as they always have. But Healy is managing to hold his own here against Ferraris, despite Dominic being a little bit faster last time by.
We said it right at the start of this broadcast, the walls are close everywhere around this circuit, and now we're seeing some of the drivers pushing a bit too hard, finding those limits and then consequently finding those walls. So what Ferraris and Healy have got to be careful of is that they've got to give it all if they want that 6th position, whether it's Healy to hold on to it or Ferraris to get it, but they can't push over that limit because it could end catastrophically. It has for Dance, who's had to jump into the pits once again.
Yeah, big shame there for Cameron Dance, so won't be a good points haul for him, but Healy, with no one in front of him, except for Sislovsky, who is much too far ahead for the draft to work. He's a bit of a sitting duck here in a straight line. Have a look at Ferraris, just electing to let off the throttle early, concentrating on those exits. Both of them just avoiding the wall. They are pushing very hard.
Yeah, indeed, bouncing off hard, getting all the way out to that curb and that AstroTurf, and the pressure is definitely on from Ferraris here. He can stick well out of some of the corners and down the straights. It's very, very close this time, but he just hasn't seen a big enough mistake from that trick BMW in front to be able to make the move just yet.
Well, it's likely this is going to continue for some time, especially considering they're starting to come up on the cars in front of them. John Nikolaev, actually, a bit of traffic further up the road. He could potentially be a factor, running 32.7 last time by. So I would estimate around about 3 or 4 laps they'll be coming up to him. They need to make sure that they are in position to take maximum advantage of that.
Yep, indeed. So plenty of exciting battles in the championship playing out right now as Bird has grabbed 2nd place and Hanlon is having a pretty weak race down in 12th. So Bird will extend his championship lead as it stands right now. One of the EXG cars gets a bit of grass on the braking zone for Bradley Ratu, and he's battling with Ryan Jarek and Reese Keane in a 3-car battle, 8th, 9th and 10th, bottom of the top 10, and I think Ratu has just gotten away with that because that was a nasty slide. Definitely not how you want to brake. Jarek will get the run and he's going to have to defend.
Big defense. Oh, goodness me. Moving over a little in the braking zone, and that was actually Ryan Jarrett going for the pits, so he's lost a bit more time than he would have liked. Tell you what, Bradley Ratu has been quite lucky those last few corners. Meanwhile, Healy and Ferraris right up on each other now. Ferraris on the back of Healy, drumming a bit of Morse code almost. Healy's mirrors will be absolutely full of FT1.
Yeah, good run out there, but wasn't enough through turn 5 and 6 to get close enough. You can see that Ferraris really tries to take a later apex, tries to get the power down a bit earlier. It's not quite working this time.
Yeah, here's John Nikolaev just letting them go. Very tight quarters once again. But these guys, it's starting to get to crunch time. Nearly 5 minutes to go now. So if Ferraris wants to make this move, he'll have to think about doing it pretty soon. Especially considering there is a reasonable amount of clear track in front of them now. Sislovsky, it looks like there's no chance he'll be getting him.
Indeed. Ferraris was very close out the hairpin, but didn't have any overspeed, and that's why he's not had the opportunity to try and attack into the final chicane, but he'll try and get more momentum out of there this time. And it looks like he does have a bit of overspeed now. He's right at the rear bumper. Which way is Healy going to go to defend? Healy goes to the inside. Can Ferraris go all the way around the outside? He's going to try, but it's not going to work. I've seen a few people try that. It just seems so hard to keep the speed around the outside of the 90-degree left-hander to then have the inside for the hairpin. Be a good move, a brave move, and you'd be a hero if you could pull it off, but it looks just a little bit too difficult.
Yeah, well, Ferraris is doing the right thing by just pulling up a little bit harder. It's best to keep both of the races going rather than ruin one or both of your races and risk a penalty. Meanwhile, Anthony Winkelmann has been experiencing some big troubles a bit further up the road with traffic. He was held up majorly out of the first couple of turns, and he's only just managed to get by the likes of Andrew Mogridge, but he has lost a lot of time to his teammate Alex Bird up in front.
Yeah, pretty short lap, pretty quick laps as well here, especially considering Kota and Silverstone, some of the other circuits that we've been to or will go to, and that means that the traffic just comes up a little bit quicker, is a little bit thicker. There's just not as far around the circuit for all the cars to spread out. Of course, we've got those big grids, a big variety of speed as well. So definitely seeing the traffic play into that for the leaders. Ferraris does just get his nose to the inside. There was maybe exactly a Ferrari width there, exactly a Ferraris width as well, and he gets to the inside on the final chicane, and I think he's made that work.
Great move from Dominic Ferraris. Obviously a flash of the lights there from Michael Healy just to let him know, hey, I'm not done with you, but I'm quite impressed with that move from Ferraris. It was very well executed. Here's a replay of it thanks to Modem Simulation. Ferraris continued going for the gap. He had the run. Well done on the brakes. Nice clean line through the chicane as well. It was all Healy could really do to slot in behind.
Yeah, it's a bit of an Indiana Jones move there where the door is closing and he just slides through it and grabs his hat in the nick of time, and in the end does look the hero for it, moves himself up one position. I think it was all fair and clean, that particular move. Deeper in the field, big battle from 19th to 23rd place, side by side here across the start-finish line, and Trent Thomas just holds off Joshua Burden.
Yeah, former teammates, of course. Trent Thomas, a part of Fusion Sim Racing before he decided to join Trick, and both of them giving each other the requisite amount of space, which is good to see, but they are tripping over each other a little bit back in the field. The problems that Daniel Misdale was having through the chicane, I think, slowed them up just slightly, but it's a very close battle here for the final reaches of the top 20.
Yeah, indeed it is. It's becoming a 5-car battle from 19th down to 23rd, but the battle at the end of the top 10, Ross Rizzo is closed up a little bit. Rizzo's closed up on Keen, because earlier it was a battle with Ratu, Keen, and one of the other BMWs that ended up having to dive into the pits for a second spot. It was Jarek, so must have underfueled the car potentially, but it's going to have 2 laps for Ross Rizzo to try and get past Reese Keen. Rizzo should have the pace, and he's come from deep on the grid. He's already up 9 positions, having started 19th. He's looking to make it one more, as a bit of grass on the exit there won't help the power go down for Reese Keen.
No, certainly not. And if there's anything you can count on with Ross Rizzo, it's that he will be there at the end of the race. He's one of those drivers who always looks after his car, looks after his fuel numbers, and he's always there at the end when other drivers start to fall. So that battle's certainly not over by any stretch. But John Piesnik is almost coming around to get the white flag, and what an incredible performance from last season's champion. Of course, making a very good case for his first race in the Ferrari here with 30 seconds on the clock. This will be the start of one of the cruisiest final laps in John Piesnik's career.
Yep, 5 seconds clear of Alex Bird, then a couple seconds clear of Anthony Winkelmann. Justin Wallace and Brett Cananzi battle over 12th, and there was a little bit of contact there almost. Cananzi, I think, had to get out of the throttle to not turn that Ferrari of Justin Wallace around. I think if he kept the throttle pinned, he would have done just that. So he's been successfully defended with the park it on the apex approach down the straight line here. Nothing going, and there's a car slow in front of them who dives into the pit lane, gets out of their way, and it's all about the run off the chicane, and they've got a Bo Albert catching them as well on the final lap, who'd like to make a couple more spots because he's only gained 33.
Yeah, good run there from Kananzi. He tries to pull one up the inside, but Wallace is protecting the inside line for the next turn. Little bit of contact, slight drift there from Kananzi. Well, he's no stranger to going sideways, but that's a very intense battle here on the last lap of this race for these guys.
Down hard.
Yeah, that's Hanlon there. Oh, he's actually got a good run there on Justin Wallace, has Zach Hanlon. Careful, guys. Hanlon trying his best to preserve a position as good as he can. Oh, a little bit of a slide on the exit, as you do, but that BMW rear-wheel drive putting the traction down very nicely. Hanlon moving over to cover on Justin Wallace. They almost make contact. Meanwhile, Kananzi and Albert almost going side by side right behind him.
The chicane. Hanlon's going to lose all of these spots. That'll be a huge slowdown. Bo Albert's caught up with all of these, and John Piesnik has crossed the finish line to take the win. He's our winner. But that battle, fascinating towards the end.
There's been contact! There's been contact down at the hairpin. Justin Wallace has been knocked wide. Sorry to interrupt. Hanlon and Albert are now leading this pack. And oh my goodness, I don't think Wallace or Kananzi will be too happy with this one. It's going to be side by side as Ross Rizzo makes his case for 9th place. He probably won't get it. It's side by side on the run up to the chicane for Justin Wallace and Zach Hanlon. Hanlon with a slide. Wallace, no momentum, but he's managing to keep himself just ahead of Brett Kananzi. It all went off right at the finish there. Goodness me.
Bumper cars for 11th to 14th position. That was crazy final lap for those guys. And Bo Albert getting 12th. Just lost out to Zach Hamlin at the end there. I thought Bo was going to grab 3 on the final lap. Here's what happened down into the hairpin. He tries to outbrake the BMW, and boy,
looks like there was a bit of contact between the BMW and the Ferrari there as well. So, as you said, David, just straight up bumper cars.
Does Bo have a slowdown? Did he run out of fuel? He had a huge run on all these guys. And then Hanlon's come up, and then Bo Albert may have let his teammate through. His teammate is battling for this championship. Look at this. Albert in the BMW slows up just before the finish line, gives up 1 position to his teammate in the BMW, keeps Justin Wallace and Brett Kananzi behind. Wow, that was a crazy final lap.
Oh, man, what a great race. Well, here are the unofficial results then. John Piesnik by 4.2 seconds on Alexander Bird. Anthony Winkleman completing the podium there for Trick Sim Sports. As we, Darren Lobb in 4th place. 5th, Scott Kozlowski. Top 8 rounded out by Ferraris, Healy and Ratu. Great performances from all of those drivers, fighting off many a challenge.
Yep, and then some of the rest of the finishing results is these battles we were watching so intensely. Reese Keane holds on to 9th place ahead of Ross Rizzo in what was a drag race to the line. Less than a 10th of a second in that one. And then Zach Hanlon does get 11th place ahead of his teammate Bo Albert, who gained 35 positions this race. Just making up all of the ground there. And then 13th place, Justin Wallace, 14th, Brett Kananzi. Those two came together on the final lap in the hairpin. Then Martin Silvassi in 15th. Adam Briggs gets 16th.
17th place was Ryan Jarek for Eclipse Sim Sports. Benjamin Johnson in 18th position. Cameron Stubber and Joshua Burden, the final driver in the top 24 Fusion Sim Racing. Daniel Misdale and Simon Mazzomo, 21st and 22nd. As the top 24 is rounded out by 2 very unfortunate individuals, Cameron Dance and Philip Worley. 1 taken out due to mistakes, 1 due to penalties.
Big field. The remaining finishers on the lead lap were Neil Pearson, Warren Pickering, Trent Thomas, Daryl Carter, and David Mulhall in 29th. Was the last on the lead lap. First car lap down was Mia Ott, and then Andrew Mogridge and Rob Harris. We'll probably cycle through those remaining finishers on your screen.
Yes, indeed. These are the drivers who were less fortunate. Duffin, Owen, Nikolaev, Alex Court, Nick Carroll, Brad Newman, Sean Reed, and Blake Haswell rounding out the top 40. And then over the page, we have the very unfortunate drivers, our retirements, Hender, Hins, Brook, Gallon. That's going to be big. Gallon with some rotten luck here. And of course, Huxham, Smith, and Davison rounding out your field. Unfortunate for those guys, but we will now talk to the top drivers after this message from our sponsor.
Epiroc is like a large extended family and everyone looks after each other. This is what inspires me.
Epiroc Australia is looking for passionate people to be part of our global team and to make a real difference for our customers. If you're ready to start a new journey, visit us at epiroc.com.au. Well, now we go to the driver interviews, and my goodness, what a race and what a performance it was from John Peasnick, switching to the Ferrari for the rest of the season. John, you forfeited all your championship points up to this point in the season, but my goodness, it's like you were driving the Ferrari all along. What a performance.
Yeah, thank you guys. It wasn't it was a very nice race. Very happy with that one. But the decision to change cars and forfeit points wasn't the easiest thing to do. But I feel I wanted to do it for myself, just to feel a bit more comfortable in the car that suited my style. So yeah, I'll cop it on the chin. It was my fault for choosing the BMW and making a little bit of a bad choice on my behalf. But I'm very happy to get the first race underway in the Ferrari and get a nice win.
So what was it about the BMW that caused you to abandon it in favour of the Ferrari?
It's probably just the driving style. Like the car itself is the BMW is an all-round great car, but I couldn't get the braking corner entry right. And as you've probably highlighted it on a fair few races of mine, my corner entry is a little bit different to other people. I take a little bit tighter lines and square the exits, and just the car wasn't allowing me to do that. And with the front engine, I didn't have the traction I wanted either, and just creating little niggles everywhere. And enough was enough.
Well, it just goes to show how important car choice is in a championship like this. All depends on how you can take advantage of your car's various characteristics. But obviously, a great performance for you in the Ferrari, first time off here at Montreal. Remaining rounds of the season obviously look pretty good from here too.
Yeah, by all means. Obviously, there's going to be some strengths there for the BMW and some other cars. It's bit more of the flowing circuits, but I'm obviously a little bit more comfortable now in this one. So hopefully, I can take the fight to them for the rest of them. Obviously, points wise, I can't really make that one up, but I'm happy to let that one go and just enjoy the remainder of the season.
Well, hopefully we can talk to you again soon, John, because it does look like you enjoyed yourself a lot out there. Before we let you go, any shout outs you'd like to give?
Just a shout out, obviously, to my mate Reese for obviously getting me on here every night and helping me get the car up the pace and getting the decision across the line. So yeah, big thanks to him.
Thank you very much, John Peasnick, your race winner there for JP Racing. We will next go to our second place man, Alexander Bird, for Trick Sim Sports. Alex, a second place for you there after starting second. It looked like a pretty uneventful race for Peasnick up the front, but for you guys in second back, there was a lot of fighting going on.
Yeah, race. I thought you were about to say it looked uneventful for me, and I was going to say, what race were you on?
No way, mate. No way.
But I put it in the wall on lap 1, put it in the wall on lap 2. Then I got a slow down on lap 5. We went 3 wide. And then thankfully we pulled a smart one on the pits there with the early stop, cool the tyres down and get a hot lap in. And that got us back out in front of Darren. And then I think Ant underfueled a bit, so he let me go to have a chase. And I was actually making inroads, but then, and I suppose John also managing, but then I nearly went off at turn 5 and just dialed it back after that. It was no point. Yeah, but I think the track temp caught me out. Like, we'd done all our testing in hot, and then this cold track, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't turn it. For sort of the first half of the race, it's a mess.
Well, nonetheless, the latter half of the race turned out to be a bit of a cruise home for you there in second place. But obviously, with Zach Hanlon having his issues, you tend to you now have a pretty good gap there up the front of the drivers' standings.
Yeah, obviously John took a new car, so he's gone back to 0 points. I didn't actually know about Zach, but yeah, it's effectively a win in the championship. or in the context of the championship, it's effectively we're not finished out of everyone who's a contender, so that's fantastic. And I think at this point we don't have to push or take unnecessary risks, even if I am going to fence it when I'm not taking risks. We can at least try and apply a little bit of conservatism to it at this point, and go for those sort of podiums.
Well, hopefully we talk to you again in the commentary box if that is the strategy that you at Trick are going to employ, Alex. Who would you like to thank before we let you go?
Just the usual, everyone that's organises a series, of course. You guys at SimSpeed, Trick Sim Sports, Trick Custom Fabrications, and Night Rider Designs.
Alexander Bird there, second place finisher for Trick Sim Sports. Speaking of Trick Custom Fabrications, Anthony Winkleman now in the commentary box with us, your third place finisher. And Anthony, wow, the end of that race just went off completely, but there was action all throughout the field through there. What was it like from your perspective?
It was hairy.
I'll bet it was.
Yeah, it was an interesting race that we had decent pace, and me and Alex ran quite different setups, just purely I did no laps. Alex did a lot more laps than I did, and then I wasn't comfortable, so it sort of just settled with a set, and yeah, he got damage early on, which it backed us all up, and then as you probably would have saw, we ended up going 3 wide in a place where it shouldn't be even 2 wide.
Yes.
That was more or less sort of tuck in behind, but the speed on that Ferrari is insane. There was no way around it, so it sort of had to play the patient game for a bit and save a bit of fuel.
Yeah, speaking of saving fuel, I heard from Alex that you underfueled it in the stops. Is that true?
Yeah. I'm probably relying a little bit too heavily on the old JRT these days, but came into the pits, took the fuel that told to take, and obviously I've been in the draft that whole race, and it's adjusted in the last couple of laps that I needed to save. So that's why the gap opened up with me and Alex quite a fair bit in the end. I let him through, knowing I had to save as well, because no point trying to battle your teammate when I've got to save fuel. It's only going to back us up into the opposition. So just sort of let him through and see if I can tuck in and hold on.
Well, that you did. A third place finish for you, despite battling all race long with Darren Lobb. So once again, some great form for the Trick BMWs.
Yeah, it was a really good result, man. Effectively, it is a 1-2 for us since John took the penalty with the car change. So we can't be any happier than what the result we got. It was our race to lose in that respect. So really happy with the boys, and everyone pretty much had a good result. I think Trent had a bit of a woe race, and same with Martin, got turned around, but had a big fight to come back through the grid. So it was really good amongst the whole spread of the cars.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Anthony Winkleman. Before we let you go, any shout outs that you have in mind?
I just Trick Custom Fabrications, Night Rider Designs, the boys from Trick Sim Sports, massive efforts once again. You guys for hosting the broadcast, and GLA for hosting the series.
Thank you very much, Anthony Winkleman, third place finisher for Trick Sim Sports. Well, that brings to an end proceedings for tonight, David. Next round of the championship is going to be at Zandvoort, but as a support race to the V8 Scops Bathurst 1000, which is certainly going to be a big draw for this championship.
Yeah, it means it'll be a very, very fantastic show, and plenty of crossover between the fans of both series. And again, we've seen that every time these GT cars come out, the competition is fierce. They put on some interesting action, and we never quite know what's going to happen. And definitely expecting that again.
We certainly will. I hope that you join us for that particular round. It's going to be next week, next fortnight. My apologies, getting schedules slightly mixed up there. But the fun does not stop on SimSpeed TV. We are going to have the first round of the Michelin Pilot Challenge official racing tomorrow night on SimSpeed TV. And of course, we have the Oceanic Endurance Championship this weekend on Sunday. So be sure to stick around for that. Thanks very much, of course, to Epiroc for your title sponsorship to GT Leagues Australia as well for the hard work behind the scenes setting this series up. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Reese Gardner. That was David Haynes alongside me. We're SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. We'll see you next time.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going around the outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my God. Big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, here we go. Oh no.
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?